You can have glimpses of high performance from time to time, even if you're not doing well, if you're not doing okay.
The idea of resting, which is the part of the training, because that's another thing that fighter pilots and high performance in general don't do very well. And it's valid also for my athletes that I know they're not listening.
So this idea of active recovery for the brain, for the mind, is also something that I'm passionate about and sharing.
You know, when I fly my best mission, I already flown that mission like 100 times because I've been chair flying. It's everything from the radio calls to the emotions as well.
The brain is 2% of your body weight, but it uses 20% of your energy, of the total calories of your day, right? So high stress, high support.
If you think that mental training is a hidden edge for fighter pilots, top athletes, elite performers, and leaders, but you want to know for sure, this episode is for you. Welcome to Tools of Fighter Pilots. I'm TC and I'll be your host. 30 years in aviation have taught me a lot, and one thing I know for sure, mastery in the cockpit isn't just stick and throttle, it's about what's happening in your brain. Today I'm excited to bring on someone who truly understands that, who's really passionate at a world-class level, Gustavo Ruthes. Gustavo is a psychotherapist, mental performance consultant, and founder of Perfect Mind Mental Performance. He has worked with fighter pilots across NATO and allied nations, Olympic athletes, first responders, real high-stake operators. Gustavo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tommaso. Happy to be here.
Let's jump straight in. I want to start with something that stood out to me from your work. One of your saying is, there is no high performance without well-being. And that really resonates with me now, but for who knows me, I come from an old generation of pilots where mental well-being 20, 30 years ago was not a priority, not only on normal life, but definitely in military training, military flying. So after 30 years flying everything from trainers to fighters, I can tell you that when your mind is scattered or fatigued, your margin for error disappears. New generations are, in my opinion, smarter and more technically prepared than what we are right now as instructors, but they need a strong approach to mental well-being when we talk about flying, and in particular in preparing for the training that you know very well. It's a fifth generation platforms training, because in the new scenarios, there is so much to take. And mind and body must be in the right place, like you said. So from your perspective, Gustavo, why is mental well-being so critical for elite performers, especially for fighter pilots? But then we will extend this one also to elite performers in general.
I like to say that because you can have glimpses of high performance from time to time, even if you're not doing well, if you're not doing okay. But in order to have what we want from the pilots that we work with, and in any other contest like an executive or an athlete, what you really want is sustained high performance. It's a high performance that lasts an entire season, an entire campaign, an entire quarter, or an entire year, right? And the well-being, people's mental health and well-being, it's really the foundation of sustained high performance. Think about, to make an example here, for our pilot audience, it's like having a powerful engine, all these fancy tools and techniques that we can use and apply and teach them. It's like having a very powerful engine, but without a landing gear, it's sort of useless, right? You need to have something to fall back on. You need to have those, what we call in psychology, protective factors of your well-being and performance. If you think about building a house, you start not from the roof or from the walls, but you need to have a solid foundation first. Otherwise, everything else falls apart. And your well-being, it's the base, is the foundation to which you can build then high performance and skills in order to perform at a high level. You know, when you mentioned about your generation, and maybe 30, 40 years ago, when people were talking about cancer, that's something that was, well, nobody likes to talk about cancer. If you know somebody in your family or yourself had cancer, you were ashamed or something, right? To share that, to tell others. And then people start talking about it, and it kind of went away. And now everybody recognized it's important to raise awareness and talk about it. Mental health went through that right after. And I feel like we're in a stage that mental health used to be something that you don't talk about. It's a sign of weakness if you're suffering from it. But nowadays, the new generation is a lot smarter about it. They are talking about it. There's less stigma. Leaders are understanding that it's important to take care of people's well-being and mental health. What I find that we lack still is the training and the tools to give them to equip the pilots, the fighter pilots, and athletes and executives to take care of themselves. They shouldn't have to figure it out all on their own, right? They should be part of the training program. It should be standard that they have this set of tools and skills that they need whenever it's necessary. So for me, that's why high performance doesn't exist without well-being, especially sustained high performance. And in the profession of fighter pilots, you know better than me. I'm not a pilot. Don't have any military background, just the psychology and the athletic. But stress and fatigue in your environment equals distractions and mistakes. So it's a high stress environment, and you cannot reduce the stress, but you can increase maybe the support that you get in order to meet that challenge, right? So high stress, high support. That's what it comes down to. That's what you need.
I really like the comparison that you did with the landing gear. You could have used the parachute, but you used the landing gear, okay? Because using the parachute is kind of going, okay, something bad already happened, so now you need to find a way out, But the landing gear is something that you're always using, so it has become something that really is gonna help the new generation. It's gonna help also the old generation to understand what's going on. I know you're working with the ITTC, ITPS, and in the past we had some discussions on how should be an instructor for a fifth generation student pilot. And we were like, we're not gonna be the same as them. Technologically, they're gonna be way advanced. These guys are gamers. These guys are really geeks on electronics and technology. So, but what we need to transmit is exactly this kind of passion and airmanship and all the tools that they will make their flights a little bit their complex flights a little bit safer. The other day I was flying with a basic formation mission with one of my students, and it was in the front seat, and it's a basic skill mission. So you're flying only basic stuff. You're close to the leader, you do formation takeoff and landing. In reality, when you are operational pilot, you fly these phases only for a few minutes during the mission. But for him, it was a very intense mission because he had to pay attention to the references, to the radio calls and everything. So even if it was a basic mission, it was very, very demanding. And I asked him, "Are you tired?" And he didn't answer at the beginning because when you start pilot training, you are unconscious, incompetent. You don't know what you're doing. You need to see things. You have the simulators, yes, but then when the real thing comes, you don't perceive the entity of the mistakes that you're doing. So, it was like kind of a whip effect on the mistakes that he was doing, because the more the mission was going on and he was making the mistake. So, effectively, back to my question, are you tired? The student didn't answer. So, you participated as a speaker in a great event, I think, the Military Flight Training Conference in Sardinia, and you shared a presentation, Fighter Pilots High Performance Recovery and Optimization Program. In one of the slides here, you talk about mental training in detail. So you're talking here about training attention, okay? Not just manage it, but train it. Can you please unpack this a little bit for us?
Fairly new research, I guess I should say, in the past maybe 10 years or so. There's an emerging body of studies that are figuring out how to improve people's attention in any given task that they engage in. Because what used to happen in the past, and you as in your sports background, you may have seen athletes do this before, and they do training such as maybe doing puzzles or games and apps where they claim that it helps you improve your focus, improve your attention. Also, those reaction time exercises with lights, and people are supposed to see the light and react to it. None of that stuff has a lot of strong evidence behind it to support the fact that you get better, not just in the task, but also at a different task. So you get better at the games, you get better at the app, at the puzzles, but when you translate that into the real world, you see there's not really a significant difference in your performance. So recently, there has been these studies that they show that there are certain exercises, mental training exercises that you do that you can actually improve not just the strength of your focus, so the ability to stay focusing on whatever it is that you want, but also to focus on that for longer periods of time. And more importantly than that, is to improve your what's called metacognition. So, in your meta awareness, is the ability to realize where your mind is at from time to time in any given moment. There's a Harvard study that shows that really interesting data that 50% of the time, I think it's about 46, 48%, about 50% of the time, your mind is not on the task at hand. So right now, for example, we're having this conversation, and 50% of the time you're paying attention to it, and about half of the time you're thinking of something else. What are you going to say next? Maybe you're making a judgment about what I'm saying. You agree, you disagree, or you're thinking about something else. That's what happens. We go through our entire lives missing half of what we're doing, what we're thinking about. So this training your attention, can actually improve your awareness. And when you realize what you're thinking about, when you realize that your mind is not there on your task at hand, you're not present in the moment, then you can make the switch back to it. Now imagine the implications of that in a high stakes environment, such as a fighter pilot. Everybody has these distractions, especially when you have task overload and you're talking to ATC and you're flying the aircraft and you are communicating, you're also doing your cross checks and all these things that you got to think about. If your mind starts to go somewhere else, the sooner you can catch yourself and bring your focus back to what matters, the less the chance of making a mistake, the better decisions you're going to make in those, especially in those stressful situations. If you're thinking about not just training, but even combat missions for pilots that I work with, they're actually being deployed in combat missions. So it's super important not just to have a stronger focus, to be actually focusing on whatever it is that you want to focus on, to control your mind that way, but also to realize when you're not focusing on the task at hand, and then bring your attention back to it. So that's essentially what this new body of research from about 10 years or so is starting to show, that you can do that not just in a controlled environment, but when you train at home, you can get better in other aspects of your professional and personal life as well.
That's really gold because it's applicable to all the high performance endeavors. I mean, if you think about sport, when you're racing, you have to focus on your fuel plan. You have to focus on the metrics that you need to maintain to race. So really, and it's a way of scanning internally the situation and understanding how to effectively react.
I feel like technically as pilots, you're really good and trained at realizing, your situation awareness is everything, right? You need to see what's going on in the environment around you. You need to take it all in. But sometimes what it's overlooked, it's the internal environment, what's going on in your head. And under stress, our attention is pulled away and we start to do what's called, time traveling. You start worrying about the future. And if you're thinking about the future, guess what you're not thinking about? You're not thinking about the present right now. Or maybe even a mistake you have made during takeoff or earlier in the mission. And now or IP gave you a hard time because you made a mistake, so you keep thinking about that and you focus maybe on not messing up again or something. So your mind is not in the task at hand. So scanning for those, what I call inner threats, allow you to prevent the time travel, focus on the present moment so you can do what you need to do. When negativity starts to arise in your mind, optimism, positivity, we know from research, is a protective factor of high performance. And it's hard to just be positive, right? So when you realize that you're starting to get negative, when you start to think, oh no, I messed up, I'm going to mess up again, there's no point in even trying, or I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that. When you take a lot less risks, even controlled risks, then you don't get the results that you need to do your job, because your job is very risky, very difficult. You need to have some sort of risk tolerance. So the inner voice commands, scanning for those inner threats, it's very, very important. And another piece of the attention training there, it's almost like a byproduct of it, like let's call it a side effect. It's not just the cognitive aspect of it, but also emotionally, you can handle stress better. You build your stress tolerance to it. you literally reduce the activation of the amygdala. It's a part of the brain which controls your fear center. And as a consequence of that, by being, some studies talk, I don't like to talk about numbers too much, but some studies suggest from 40 to 50% less activation in the amygdala. So if I told you there is a technique that you can use that after 4 to 8 weeks of training, you can be 40 to 50% less reactive to stress, would you give it a try to that? That's what
Yes.
attention training can do,
Yes.
right?
No, I mean, if you think about fighter pilot, you're thinking about preparedness. Technically and technologically, people go. If you listen to the other episode of the podcast, we're talking about briefing and debriefing. We're talking about task rehearsal. For example, in the last episode with Rico, we talked extensively about task rehearsal, and it's something that at 50 years old. So probably through my journey into my aviation career and sport career, I've ended up creating some of the mechanisms that you're talking about, but it was like a trial and error. It was not something that the beauty now is that you have those tools that you can provide to the young guns in order to become better than us. That's what we want. So I still should fly, at 50, I still should fly the mission. And anyway, that episode was a moment of deep reflection. Walk us through how mental rehearsal rewires the brain for performance.
Yeah, just by the way, I did watch your episode that you and the partner did there, and you guys did a great job breaking it down and even applying outside of the aviation world into the for professionals, business professionals, executives, and all that. I really like that. Essentially, what to keep it simple and not bore people with the biology of it or something, but neuroplasticity is just this ability of the brain to change over time based on stimulus. So if you stimulate certain parts of the brain, certain areas of the brain, certain skills that it has, then those parts of the brain literally grow and you get better, more efficient at it. So think about somebody, like you probably, I know you speak other languages. You're originally from Italy, so you speak multiple languages. I speak 5 languages. I know that when I stop speaking a little bit of French and Spanish, for example, I start to lose the fluency, right? I still know the language, but I lose fluency, or I have to search for words. And what is that? Those connections at the brain for that specific area, they're starting to be broken down because they're being underutilized or not utilized. And other parts of the brain that are being more used, they start to build connections and you get more information flow and you get more proficient, more fluent at it. That happens with music. If you used to play an instrument, when you practice, the more you practice, the more brain cell connections you get, more information flows through and you're better at it. The same thing happens for any technical skills. For attention system, if you stimulate your attention system, your focus gets better. Even if you have ADHD, for example, that nowadays a lot of people are being diagnosed for being neurodivergent and all that. Even people with diagnosed ADHD, they can improve their focus because they can, through neuroplasticity, through training their attention system. And any motor skill for an athlete, for a pilot, that can be improved over time with practice. That's essentially what neuroplasticity can do to you. As a consequence of that, why does that matter? For a fighter pilot, your OODA loop, your reaction time, and your recall of information, the stuff that you already know from your training, you can do that quicker and you can do that better if you prepare ahead of time, if you have done it multiple times in your head, right? And to be honest here, I think it's important mentioning that nothing is as good as the real thing, right? So nothing substitutes real flight hours. But as you know, we have synthetic training in the simulator that it's not as good as flying for real life, but it really supports the training. You can do a lot of things there. You can maybe have more flight time because it's expensive to run a whole operation in the aircraft and everything. So it's not as good, but it's a good training. I will put the mission rehearsal or imagery visualization or whatever you want to call it, chair flying, as another level of training that costs literally nothing. It's super effective because it forces you to be on task, right? You can be, for example, at the sim and just not take it as seriously and not learn as much from it, even though you're going through the motions. You're doing what the instructor tells you, but you're not necessarily as engaged with it because you might think this is not the real deal, so I don't have to take it as seriously. If I crash, I just reset, start again, right? But in the real life, you can't do that. In a visualization, you can't do that because you need to be immersed in the experience to make it work. So that's why it's really very good training that way. You're really paying attention, and it almost feels like you're doing the real thing, so you can perform better. There are four main uses to visualization according to research. Essentially, you can use it for technical reasons, for technical aspects, right? You want to improve certain maneuvers, flight maneuvers, evasive maneuvers, BFM, things like that. You can use for tactical reasons, so close flight formation, tactical navigation. You can do that. You can prepare for that by visualizing yourself going through the motions and communicating with ATC, aviating the aircraft, etc. Technical, tactical. But what's mostly underutilized, perhaps, is for mental toughness, for the resilience, problem solving. You can try to anticipate what could happen in a flight and then brainstorm solutions to it ahead of time. So it looks more or less like this. You can visualize yourself flying. What if this happens? What should I do then? What if that light goes on? What did I do? And by doing that work a little bit before the flight, if that happens, then you can react more quickly. And those split-second decisions make a big difference in the real world, right? Especially for fighter pilots. So the mental toughness, the problem solving. And lastly, the fourth aspect of it is the emotional management. You can just control your emotions. In courses of emotional intelligence, we teach that there are no good or bad emotions. Emotion is just information, and you should take it for what it is. If you're feeling something, you should take for what it is, not let it overwhelm you, not make decisions based on that feeling, right? If you're feeling anger, you're going to engage the enemy no matter what. No, you have to make a decision. If you're feeling anger, your body's telling you something. If you're feeling fear, your body's telling you something. If you're feeling excitement, your body's telling you something. So it's information. You become aware of that, and then you make the most appropriate decision rationally based on what you're feeling, right? So the visualization, the rehearsal can help you with that as well, how to manage your emotions. Because any emotion, there's no good or bad emotions. Anger can be a very powerful motivator and driving factor for you, right? So you don't want to manage emotions in the point that you have no anger, but also you cannot have too much anger either. Otherwise, you're going to act on impulse and make a mistake. Managing that through visualization, it's very powerful and highly underutilized in my experience with all different professionals in different areas.
I really like what you're saying about the emotions because it's probably the most underrated aspect of this mental training, because it makes me laugh. You were talking about how many you rehearse and you go into the details when you visualize, and it make me think about Bill Walsh, the legendary coach of the 49ers. There was scripting 25 plays, so he would know that the first 25 plays of the game would be those, and plus he had other certain number of plays. So you're scripting, you are chair flying, you're reducing the variables, but then going into the emotional level, you need to unlock it probably with this type of coaching that you're doing, because it doesn't come naturally. I mean, fighter pilots are known for being resilient because we go through the military training, which is tough training, and you're always tested and everything. But having this tool now that we can go to touch the emotional part and to make it come out in order to help the pilot, it's a new thing. It's really a new thing. I'm amazed about this stuff here.
For most of my career, I've worked with athletes, right? Started with student athletes, then professional athletes, and so that's my world. That's where I came from. And yeah, a couple of years ago, when I started working with military personnel, specifically fighter pilots, I thought, what am I going to teach these guys, right? What are we going to do? The guys are already superhumans, like, what am I going to do? So I started to apply the practices, the things that I do with athletes to these tactical athletes, right? To fighter pilots. And to take away the subjectivity of psychology, because that's one of the criticisms of my field, because it can be pretty subjective sometimes. I invested in some equipment, medical grade biofeedback. So you can literally measure people's emotions on the screen, right? You can see the temperature on their hands, how it changes when you get more or less stressed. Their heart rate, blood pressure, all those things, right? It can change. It's physiological responses to stress. And when you hook a pilot up on that machine and you can see how they're feeling in any given moment, then you can see that the stuff, that's how for me it was important. But and then I could see that I can really help them because we will go through some exercises, we'll purposely stress them out, and we see the screen, the stress going up. And then we tell them, okay, show me what would you do now to calm yourself down. And then they do what they try to do, what they would do in the cockpit. And you will see a reduction sometimes in the stress, and sometimes it would be the same. It's showing that's not working. Physiologically, it wasn't really a big change. They were just used to enduring it, right? And then after we teach them some techniques, some exercises, some practical, applicable stuff that I was working with athletes before, you can actually see a big difference on the screen. Now the stress is going down, the physiological responses. And that not only is good for making better decisions under pressure, but also for saving energy. If you think about a pilot doing 2, 3 combat missions in a day, you need to recover faster for your next flight, for your next sortie, right? So it's not just your, okay, this 1 hour flight, I can do it well. What about your third flight of the day, 6 weeks into a campaign? That's when this training will really, really help prevent you, because it can save you energy. The brain is 2% of your body weight, but it uses 20% of your energy, of the total calories of your day. It's a power hog. So anything you can do to reduce stress, to save energy for the future, I think it's a win.
For you guys that are listening, if you have listened so far, you hit the button subscribe and put a like, please. Thank you very much. We're gonna make the content even better next time, but we need the support with the subscribers and likes. Yeah, just to recap what you just said, for my experience, when I fly my best mission, I already flown that mission like 100 times because I've been chair flying. It's there in my head, like I know I have the little doors that I need to open to find bits and pieces, everything from the radio calls to the emotions as well. Okay, because maybe if I'm flying abroad, different environment, or many airplanes in the mission, so potential threats could pop up. But it's not, as you say, just visualizing. It's building these neural wirings so that when the moment comes, you execute almost automatically. We have been doing this with the simulators, with the bold face, the procedures that you just connect to that caption and you do certain actions. But now you're going deeper into the mental, let's say, realm, where you are training the brain to perceive and be more relaxed as well. Because you were talking about, being more relaxed. We're talking about stress, and also one of your items in your work is the idea of resting, which is the part of the training, because that's another thing that fighter pilots and high performance in general don't do very well. As you probably know, I'm an Ironman coach, and it's valid also for my athletes that I know that are listening, and they don't like to rest properly. Like, I see a run that was supposed to be in a certain heart rate zone. I was like, what happened last night? Oh, I slept 4 hours. I said, why did you even do the workout at this point? You need to be rested, because this is when your real fitness works, and this is actually part of the winning. So resting and recovery.
Rest is part of the training. Okay, so when you work at when you design somebody's training cycle, there should be a part of it that you increase intensity. There should be a lighter intensity. There's tapering. There's all these stages, and there needs to be a part where they rest and recover. It's just part of the cycle. It's part of the process, part of the training. Muscle, when you want to gain muscle, you shouldn't just work more. More is not always necessarily better, right? You increase your muscle mass when you sleep, when you recover. And for the brain, the same thing. You process emotions, you process information, most of your information processing. So you're learning. If you attend a lecture in one day, when you're learning, you're not when you're paying attention, sitting down in a classroom and listening to you. The real learning, sticking to your long-term memory, happens overnight during your sleep. So if you are undersleeping, you're actually leaving on the table a lot of the learning. You're just letting it slip through the cracks. You need to, there are different stages of sleep and all that. I don't want to go too much detail. We don't have time for it. But during certain stages of the sleep cycle is when information processing and emotional processing from the day takes place. So if you are under resting, specifically under sleeping, for example, you wake up next day in worse moods. You are more reactive, not as responsive, right? There's a difference between respond and react. And you just don't recover better. You just don't even learn better. So it's counterproductive, counterintuitive to stay, for example, late at night studying so you can read more, get more information, if you're going to sleep less and you're going to forget most of it in the next day because it didn't sleep enough. There is these studies that showing that 99% of population needs the average normal, what you would think it's a normal sleep needs, 7.5, 8 hours a night. 99% of the population needs that. Only 1% of the population can thrive with less than that or even more than that, because oversleeping is not good for the brain either. So 7.5, 8 hours, that's what most people should be aiming for. If you are in a room with 100 people, I can prove to you statistically that not all of you are not the 1%. You know what I mean? So out of those 100 people, one of them are going to be the one that can thrive with less sleep. So you need to pay attention to that. You need to take care of your sleep and protect your rest and recovery time. I always give this example, regardless of the industry that I'm working in, when I'm doing a workshop or one-on-one sessions, I always mention long distance athletes like yourself. It's really common in this world, the idea of active recovery, right? After a marathon, after an Ironman, you might want to do nothing the next day, the next few days, because you're all hurting, you're in pain, you're sore. But every high level athlete knows that the best thing to do is to actually to do something, right? To do a little light workout, maybe some pool work, going for a walk, something light. It's better than nothing. You stimulate blood flow, you clear up metabolites, and you just feel better than if you did nothing. Now, did you know, the people know that mentally you can do the same thing? There are things you can do for your active mental recovery that allows you to come back focused better, more motivated on your next day than if you just crashed on the couch scrolling on your phone, doing nothing. So this idea of active recovery for the brain, for the mind, is also something that I'm passionate about and sharing. And lastly, there's a lot of research on leisure, right? There's a lot of studies out there that show that when people engage on a daily basis or even on a weekly basis with an activity that has nothing to do with their work, just completely a hobby, essentially, something for fun, they do better in their work the next day. Just because their mood is better, they stimulate parts of the brain that are different, right? If you're constantly working with your hands, your hobby is more maybe intellectual, then you're more refreshed to do your work the next day, or vice versa. If your work is highly intellectual, tinkering in a garage with a car with like an engine or doing some sort of art or something, that helps you be more motivated for your work the next day. So this idea that always more is better, it's not necessarily good. Although if you do the right thing, active recovery does help you be better. And engaging things for fun, it's nothing about being lazy but disconnecting from work really helps you perform better at work the next day.
It took me years to to realize that I cannot sprint forever, and the best pilots, the best athletes, the best leaders are the ones that they know when to push, how to pace. No, we were talking in sport. You need to pace. You need to pace. It doesn't mean to go slow. You need to go on the right pace. As you said, when it's the marathon, you go race pace. The day after, it's just a walk. I don't know if you're familiar with the ikigai, but it looks like that if you are involved in hobbies, then you live also longer and you live better. So there is this population of Japanese people in this island that they have hobbies, they have and they continue living in their life till 95, 100 years old. So there is an interesting book from a Spanish author about this practice.
I feel like culturally it's a big thing, right? Some cultures are more understanding of that already.
Yes, more prone.
Others
Yes,
are a little
yes.
bit behind. And I feel like there's in the executive world, just to make a little side note here, there is this hustle culture, right? This idea that I'm gonna sleep 4 hours or 6 hours, because the more work I do, the better I will get, the more profit I will make for the company or something like that. And then there's like guys, maybe I don't know, Elon Musk, that claims that he sleeps 4 hours a night and just works 20 hours a day or something. That's better. I actually believe that people that say that, they're probably already rich and they just don't want their competitors to do well. So they say that. Maybe they're not even doing, but they
Okay.
say that so the competitors underperform. But honestly, yeah, the rest and recovery are so important in all aspects in all industries.
Before we wrap up, I want to get a little bit tactical. So for pilots or anyone who wants to perform under pressure, give us one mental training exercise that they could start doing today, and they're gonna see in certain time the effects.
I feel like something that I've been focusing a lot lately for high stress professionals, right? So it's the polyvagal theory, the vagus nerve. There's this nerve that controls. Uh, it's highly attached to your nervous system and your gut as well. Uh, it controls essentially everything that you do, from your heart rate, from your blood pressure to your cortisol levels, and there's a lot of things involved there. And you can manage that doing breath work with breathing exercises, essentially. Now, everybody understands, just to make an analogy, that if your muscles are sore, like you're tense, you're feeling like you're I don't know, your neck is tense, maybe you did an exercise and it's strained, or you slept funny or whatever, you need to soothe it, you need to relax, maybe you get a massage, maybe you do some stretching, and that soothes the area, soothes the muscle, right? If it's too stressed out, too tense. Now, imagine if there was an exercise that you could grab maybe your heart and your brain, and you can calm them down. You can like pet them. You get your heart and pet. Okay, relax, calm down. So then they can actually slow down and perform better. Breathing exercises, breath work can do just that, essentially, through the vagus nerve. Okay, so there's a lot of breathing exercises and things on YouTube that you can see, that you can find, and they say like there's the Navy SEAL breath work, and there's all these kind of things. Essentially, the evidence-based stuff, it comes down to a couple of things. It's your exhale, so pushing your air out, needs to last longer than your breath in. So breathe in for a shorter time than your breath out. And also, you need to repeat this at a certain rhythm. So you need to keep up the same pace over and over again. So essentially, for example, a gentle inhale for 4 seconds, and then a 6 seconds exhale, pushing the air out. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. That's a standard ratio. And
no pauses in between. No pauses.
you can do pauses, but the most important, some people find it uncomfortable, some people feel out of breath when they're doing it. The standard recommendation is no pause, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. And doing that even 3-4 times, you can already feel better. You can see you can feel the stress reducing. But really, to have long-lasting changes, for you to have systemic changes in your brain and in your body, you should repeat that for 5 to 10 minutes a day. 5 to 10 minutes a day, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Doing at that rhythm, you have those incredible changes in your brain and in your body, such as lowering blood pressure, lowering heart rate, your perceived stress. You just feel lighter, you feel better. Your cortisol levels decrease. You have more mental clarity. You have more rational decision making when you're under pressure and under stress. Your quality of life tremendously improves by slowing it down, pay attention to your breathing, just keeping that rhythm for 5 to 10 minutes a day. And even after 3-4 reps, sometimes you already feel the benefits. What I do in my work, working one-on-one with people, with fighter pilots and all that, then we dedicate a little bit more time. Again, with biofeedback, we see what's the exact ratio of seconds that help people feel better, that gives them the most benefit. We can literally see on the screen, like I said, what's actually soothing them most. Is it 4 and 8 seconds? Is it 3 and 10? Is there a pause, no pause, right? All these variables that it changes from person to person. But for most people, the general recommendation, if your exhale is longer than your inhale and you're doing at that rhythm, you're probably going to be good.
Awesome. I'm definitely adding this to my toolkit. I've been doing something like this, but in this way, just it makes more sense. You know, flying fighters teaches you that you never arrive. You're always sharpening the blade. And what I love about your work is that it gives pilots and really anyone operating in a high stakes world a set of tools to not just survive but thrive. You said before, it's a landing gear, it's the foundation, it's not the parachute when you're falling, right? So, Gustavo, I'm gonna put all your links in the notes. Where can folks find you if they want to learn more, if they want to book time with you?
Well, I'm really passionate about the subject. As we were discussing earlier, we could probably be talking here for a long time. So I'm trying to get more active on social media so I can share this message with, with people, with the world. I feel like people are starting to understand it's important, but they sometimes don't really know what to do. So on my social media, I give some tips and some exercises and things like that to help people out, essentially. But I'm most active on LinkedIn, Gustavo Ruthes on LinkedIn. And then on Instagram and Facebook, just perfectmind.mp, Perfect Mind Mental Performance. So people can find me there, and there's going to be tips and some information, evidence-based stuff that I do in my work, in my practice. I have a website as well, perfectmind.ca. So I'm here in Canada. I work in the East Coast of Canada, but I also see clients internationally in the Middle East, in Europe. So we can connect there via the website, via email, and we'll go from there.
Yes, drop us a line if you have any questions, if you want another episode about these topics. Perfect, Gustavo. Thank you very much for joining us today. To all the listeners, remember, excellence isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional, and strategic. Train your mind like you train your tactics, and you'll always stay ahead of the curve. Until the next time, fly fast, stay sharp, and keep sharpening your tools. Thank you, Gustavo.
Thank you.